Why did Hitler hate Jews? It's not just history, it's the key to the 20th century's worst crime. From failed artist to genocide leader, how did Hitler spread hate? This video takes you on that dark journey. From a troubled childhood and bitter failures to hate becoming state policy. And the start of the Holocaust, a tragedy that killed millions. Stick around, there's a truth Hitler never saw, and it changed the world. The Holocaust is one of history's darkest chapters. Ghettos, camps, mass murder, it haunts us. But one question remains. Why did Hitler hate Jews so much? To understand, we go back to the start, Adolf Hitler's childhood. Born April 20, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, Austria. He grew up in a family full of tension. His father, Alois, was strict, bad-tempered, and controlling. He ruled with an iron fist and showed little affection. But his mother, Clara, was gentle and loving. She shielded him from his father's harshness, creating a world of art and emotion for young Adolf. The father-son relationship was incredibly strained. Alois wanted his son to be a civil servant like him. But Hitler dreamed of being an artist. When his father died in 1903, at just 14, Hitler felt a sense of freedom. Yet, even with freedom, he wasn't a good student. He preferred history and art over academic subjects. After moving to Linz, his grades dropped further. Around this time, he became fascinated with German history and romantic nationalism. An ideal of a great, pure Germany filled his young mind. The turning point came when he moved to Vienna, the capital of Austria-Hungary. He dreamed of art school, but was rejected twice in 1907 and 1908. For lacking professional artistic skill. This rejection plunged him into crisis. No qualifications, no steady job. He drifted through poor areas, slept in shelters, and painted watercolors for tourists. A time of uncertainty and darkness. It was in Vienna, a vibrant but politically and ethnically volatile city, that Hitler encountered radical ideas. The city had a large Jewish population. In this tense social climate, many politicians used anti-Semitism as propaganda to gain public support. Karl Lueger, Vienna's mayor, greatly influenced Hitler. Despite being Catholic and seemingly not anti-Semitic, Lueger was known for public speeches blaming Jews for economic decline and social crises. Hitler was gradually swept up in this hate. In cafes and libraries, he read, listened, and began to adopt the view that Jews were a threat to Germany, responsible for moral decay, corruption, and rootless internationalism. From a bitter, lonely failure, Hitler developed an extremist worldview, portraying Jews as mortal enemies of the German people. And so, the seed of personal resentment grew into a toxic political ideology. When World War I broke out in 1914, Adolf Hitler immediately volunteered for the German army. Though Austrian, he always saw himself as German. For Hitler, this was a chance to show loyalty to Germany and find purpose. He served as a dispatch runner on the Western Front. For 4 years, he witnessed the horrors of modern warfare. He was wounded, gassed, and decorated for bravery. But the war's end was the hardest blow. In 1918, Germany lost. The armistice was signed in bitterness, and Hitler couldn't accept it. Like many veterans, he didn't believe the German army was truly defeated. They believed in a stab in the back. The theory that Germany fell not on the battlefield, but to betrayal from within, Jews, communists, and left-wing politicians. This hostile ideology spread rapidly in post-war Germany, a nation in total crisis. The economy collapsed, inflation soared, unemployment was rampant, and society was in chaos. Hitler, filled with resentment and a sense of betrayal, began to see Jews as symbols of decay and ruin. Then came another shock. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919. It forced Germany to accept full blame for the war, pay massive reparations, reduce its army, cede vital territories, and suffer national humiliation. For Hitler, this was an unforgivable insult. His rage turned into a burning desire for revenge. and he became increasingly convinced that Jews were behind all of Germany's misfortunes. In 1919, Hitler entered politics. He started as an army informant, tasked with monitoring small political groups. He discovered the German Workers' Party, a small far-right group with nationalist and anti-Semitic views. Hitler joined and soon became its driving force. His oratorical skills, ability to incite crowds, and extreme stance made him stand out. Hitler's speeches were both captivating and filled with hate. He spoke of the Versailles shame, the Jewish conspiracy, and the rebirth of a great Germany. And the crowds began to listen. The German Workers' Party then renamed itself the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP. Throughout the 1920s, under Hitler's leadership, the party grew. Their ideology was clear and extreme. Nordic Germans were the master race. Jews were an internal threat to be eliminated. Germany must be revived through national unity, purging internal enemies. In 1923, Hitler attempted a failed coup in Munich, known as the Beer Hall Putsch. He was arrested and jailed. However, during his imprisonment, Hitler wrote his political manifesto, Mein Kampf Star. In it, he compiled his extremist ideas, especially his anti-Semitism. He called Jews parasites within the German nation, internal saboteurs. This hateful ideology was no longer personal emotion, it became a political doctrine. In 1933, Adolf Hitler was officially appointed Chancellor of Germany. A year later, he also became president, declaring himself Führer, supreme leader of Germany. A totalitarian dictatorship began, and Jews quickly became the primary target of its repressive machinery. From the outset, Hitler purged political opponents, banned opposition parties, and built a Nazi state centered on absolute loyalty to the Führer. But the ultimate goal was the purification of the German race, and in his mind, Jews had to be eradicated completely. Initially, concentration camps were built to imprison perceived dissidents or deviants, communists, opposition journalists, homosexuals, disabled people, and Jews. But their purpose soon changed. When war broke out, they became centers for the final solution, the complete annihilation of European Jews. Simultaneously, the Nazi regime enacted numerous anti-Semitic laws. One of the most infamous was the Nuremberg Laws, passed in 1935. They officially stripped German Jews of their citizenship and banned marriage or sexual relations between Jews and pure Germans. Jews were expelled from schools, hospitals, theaters, and the press, barred from professions. Jewish-owned businesses were confiscated, assets frozen, and their reputation smeared in the media. None of this was spontaneous. It was meticulously planned and executed through both administration and propaganda. Hitler's propaganda machine was one of the Nazi regime's most powerful and dangerous tools. Under propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, German media became a mouthpiece for hate, spreading images of Jews as deceitful, parasitic, and evil. From textbooks to children's stories, films to speeches, all repeated the same message: Jews were a blight on Germany. Hate became a lesson learned by heart, discrimination became law, and lies became truth. When World War II began in 1939, the German army invaded Poland, home to one of Europe's largest Jewish communities. In a short time, Jews were forced into tightly controlled ghettos, living in horrific conditions. We are now entering the most brutal phase, the death camps, built and operated like mass murder machines. Where victims' identities didn't matter, they were just numbers, units to be processed. Unlike traditional concentration camps, where prisoners were kept for labor, death camps operated with maximum killing efficiency, where thousands could be killed in mere hours. The methods used shocked the world. After being forced into sealed trains, hundreds of thousands were transported to camps in inhumane conditions: no water, no food, no ventilation. Many died en route. Upon arrival, they underwent a selection process. The healthy were separated for forced labor. The old, women, children, and sick were immediately sent to the gas chambers. No trials, no warning, no chance of survival. At Auschwitz, the largest death camp, gas chambers could kill thousands at once with Zyklon B gas. Bodies were then moved to crematoria, and ashes were dumped in rivers or buried in mass graves. All carried out like a cold, motionless, and utterly brutal extermination line. Besides death, many camps still served as forced labor sites. Extermination through labor. At Auschwitz-Birkenau, those who didn't die immediately slowly perished from hunger, cold, disease, and exhaustion. Prisoners were forced to work 12 to 14 hours a day in arms factories, mines, and production plants. Inadequate rations, no medicine, and insufficient clothing. When they became too weak to work, they were disposed of like trash, sent to gas chambers or shot on the spot. Human bodies were turned into commodities and then discarded like objects. At Auschwitz, to manage the vast number of prisoners, the Nazis also used tattooed serial numbers on their arms for identification and control. Arriving prisoners were shaven and stripped of their clothes, forced into striped uniforms, a symbol of anonymity and dehumanization. The camps were hell on earth. Prisoners stood for hours in roll calls, in snow, rain, or scorching sun. Many fainted from hunger and cold, left to die. The cruelty wasn't quick death, but a slow, agonizing stripping of humanity. As Allied forces advanced, the Nazis tried to cover their tracks. Documents burned, gas chambers destroyed, bodies cremated to hide their crimes. But hundreds of thousands of documents, photos, and survivor accounts exposed everything. The world saw the sheer scale of Nazi genocide. The Holocaust was no longer a rumor. It was a brutal truth etched into human history. When the war ended, death camps were liberated. The world faced an unimaginable horror. Millions murdered. European Jewish communities almost wiped out. But the pain didn't end. Survivors were left broken, hollow-eyed, shattered souls. Many had no homes to return to, families killed, houses seized or destroyed. Allies hoped for repatriation, but reality was harsh. They faced anti-Semitism, rejection, even attacks. Some 250,000 Jews were stranded in refugee camps, unable to return or easily welcomed in the West. This desperation fueled a fierce yearning for a homeland. Then came a historical turning point, the birth of Israel. In 1948, after British rule ended, the UN agreed to divide Palestine into two states, one for Jews, one for Arabs. Jews declared Israel, and Holocaust survivors finally had a place to call home. Over 136,000 survivors went to Israel. 880,000 found refuge in the US, tens of thousands more in Canada, Australia, and South Africa. The Holocaust didn't just kill 6 million Jews. It shattered faith in morality, civilization, and humanity's darker side. It began with words, propaganda, fear-mongering, scapegoating, then laws, then brutal violence. Hitler's actions were more than crimes, they were the ultimate symbol of hate's destructive power, legitimized and amplified by authority. Terrifyingly, he didn't act alone. A vast machine was built, officers, complicit silence, absent leaders. This turned a mad ideology into the 20th century's most tragic event. Yet, from that darkness, people rose. Kind souls hid Jews, helping them escape. Simply refused the whispers, the lies. Many proved light can exist even in hell. Today, we remember the Holocaust not just to mourn, but to warn and resist. Anti-Semitism persists. Extremism rises. Hateful voices still find audiences. That's why the Holocaust must be retold, so humanity avoids repeating its mistakes. Museums, archives, films are milestones of our awakening. More importantly, they are a reminder that, never again, must be a commitment, not just a slogan.